everyone, and welcome to the Watson Weekend, your weekly dose of e-commerce entertainment. I am your host, Rick Watson, and I have a co-host here.
It's me, Nick. I'm back. You guys
Nick,
don't learn.
Look, I'm happy to have you here. This is a live show. As a reminder to everyone, Nick just realized he was on the show. Like I think he thought he was off camera for a second. Everyone, let's take it easy on him. Like this is his first time co-hosting in a couple of a month or two, and so we're getting him back into the groove of things. Again, this is a live show. I'd love to know, where are you calling in from? Put it in the comments. We're going to show it on the screen. Are you calling from Canada, New York City, Columbus, Denver, like wherever you are? We'd love to hear more about you. This will be an interesting show. We're going to be talking about e-commerce platforms, but by way of payments. I made a LinkedIn post last week, and we're going to talk a lot about that this week. But before that, what else are we going to talk about, Nick?
We are going to talk about the headlines that happened this week, and there was a ton that happened, and luckily we were able to sort of cull it down.
And we were traveling this week, as RMW Commerce, working with customers, and while we were traveling, I think there was a lot of work back in the lab by the team, and frankly, I'm a little bit worried about that. Are you as worried about this as I am, Nick?
I am definitely worried about what the team came up with, because when the cat is away, the mice will play.
The mice will play. And so the team back in the lab put together a video about, I think, the two of us. And so we're going to talk about it after it rolls.
I mean, triggered so many memories.
Not all positive ones.
No, sir. And also it goes to show you, there's all that conversation about productivity in the workplace. Team spent a lot of time making that video. So an amazing video. I don't know. Who are you? Like, who are you in that? Where do you see us this past week? Was a lot.
Yeah, first of all, I Laverne and Shirley is tops for me.
Amazing.
It's one of the all-time great shows. And so if we're Laverne and Shirley, that to me, I can end my career and retire on that by itself. But the last clip with John Candy, it's over the top. Like, to me, maybe I'm John Candy in that clip.
I don't even know what to do with that. We traveled this week. We're doing a lot of traveling and work, and I want to get that one out of my mind. So, and I think a great way to actually get that out of our minds is, in fact, to get into our show. I think that there were some fun things, some interesting things that happened today, and I know the audience is always interested. So I think one of our greats, William Shakespeare, in 1564 is baptized. I think that Shakespeare plays all the time in my book. But I also think that what also played in my book when I was a kid, for those that don't know, I am a native New Yorker. Studio 54, which was really only called Studio back in the day, opens in 1977.
Wow.
One of my great regrets is I just missed it.
Yeah.
And then I know one of your classics, Rick, Who's the Boss, closes shop today after how many years do you think? How many runs did that see? How many seasons? How many runs?
10 seasons?
8.
8
Closes on
seasons.
8. Yep. So
Tony Danza?
one more. Yeah, Tony Danza, and I forget what her name was, but great show.
Yeah.
Great show.
Alyssa Milano. Come on.
Exactly.
Give me a break.
And then I'll throw one more in, which is today Conan replaces Letterman on late night. So how'd that turn out?
How long after that did Letterman grow his beard?
He started, and it's still going.
It's still growing.
Exactly.
It's still growing.
It's still growing. Anyway, now moving into our show. So a lot happened this week. We're going to focus on some of it. So why don't you kick us off with the headline hangover, my friend?
Yeah, the headline hangover is our segment where we review the top news items from the week. And to kick things off, UPS reported earnings this week. And the question is UPS flying into the ground? And look, UPS has had a tough run the past couple of years. If you look at the parcel market, volume is declining, particularly small parcels. FedEx and UPS volume is declining. Amazon volume is increasing. UPS doesn't take much Amazon volume anymore. Average daily volume from UPS is down 3%. UPS revenue is down 3%. UPS operating profit is off 30%. They told a good story last year after they negotiated the Teamsters agreement that they're going to be able to recapture all that volume they lost to FedEx, to USPS, to regional carriers, and everything was going to be fine by the end of the year. Danger, Will Robinson. Things are not fine.
Exactly. It's just so interesting because I feel like they're just so well, because like they should win, right? It's just like you think UPS. It's UPS is how you ship a package. FedEx is how you ship a package overnight. And they've done some really interesting things in a time where the cost of logistics has risen, and I feel like on the carrier part, there's been a bit of a land grab, but shocking.
Yeah. So, no, exactly. Next up, you take us to the talk.
I mean, this is a story that just keeps on giving. So after having gone through attempt one a little while ago to ban TikTok, it picked up steam and it rolled its way, the ban on TikTok, through the House, through the Senate, and I believe while simultaneously broadcasting on his TikTok account for the presidential campaign, it was signed in. And so, which I find so ironic that Biden signs the agreement, the bill, and then there's some questions about will he delete his TikTok account. But basically, I think that there's this politicized push to ban TikTok. I think that there's probably some interesting components to it being a Chinese state property and what it means from a security perspective and a Chinese owner. But effectively, it's another attempt, which overwhelmingly passes, by the way. It wasn't really difficult to get through, to force them to sell it to a U.S. Based company, or a non-Chinese company, I guess. But I think that they wrote in there like the valuation last was like $24 billion.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my take on it is it's just political. It's not going anywhere, right? It's politicized. Everyone.
Yeah. Look, I think
TikTok.
I think the two questions, like, one is, who's the company going to go to? Will it be sold? Who's it going to go to? And what should brands do in response? We don't have time to cover all that today, but that's surely on everyone's mind. So the talk, there will be more to be said here, and perhaps we'll do a full.
Growing, right?
Yeah, it's only growing, and we're going to do a full segment on that at one point. Kind of next up, I think you're going to talk to us about Amazon introduced a new subscription program. Tell us more about that.
I think it's funny. I mean, it's smart. I don't know, for those of you that shop, that are Whole Foods or Amazon Fresh people, that here in Manhattan, we pay $9.99 to have a delivery done. So what Amazon did is, I mean, if I see it, my hot take is they cobbled together some of what they're already offering and said, there's a little bit of a way we can make it better for you. And so instead of paying $9.99 all the time, it's like, we're just going to lock you in for a fee and get you to shop with us. So nothing sort of revolutionary, but everything Amazon, right? It's like, we're going to just continue to capitalize on getting people committed to being part of the Amazon holding company. And what better way than on your weekly or twice a week grocery delivery to do it with us and not have to pay that $9.99 fee each time. But oh yeah, and this is something that kills me, that the gratuity that the delivery person is getting, you will still have to pay that, because
Yeah.
your groceries wind up
all over your doorstep.
somewhere. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, look, I think Amazon finds it much easier to operate a subscription business than a e-commerce business at times. I would say from experience personally in New York City, Amazon is terrible at delivering produce, especially compared to competitors like Fresh Direct and Instacart, who seem to package things a heck of a lot better. I have 50% breakage on anything that's supposed to not be broken. Things like bread, vegetables, fruit, half of it's bad. And so Amazon needs to do a much better job here if there's going to be uptake on this for the long term. I think they're hoping that once you subscribe, you're going to be locked in forever.
I think, first of all, I'll disagree with you that the Amazon produce delivery in Manhattan is actually good. I'm
so
happy
bad.
with it. But my baseline is Trader Joe's. And listen, we I mean, as colleagues, friends, partners, we disagree on many things. We'll disagree on this. We will 100%. Agree that what Amazon is really good at is like connecting it, right? Like Amazon thinks long. And I think, as we get to our last topic, where you're going to talk about one of your favorite companies, ShipBob. This is actually a good table set for our future conversation, meaning like as in 20 minutes, 10 minutes from now, which is like, how do you connect to people, right? Because ultimately all these companies that have deep pockets are laying the groundwork for tomorrow. And I think that's kind of what Amazon's doing. It's like, we don't care. We don't need to make money on delivery. Drivers will make money on the gratuity, which is always like a default of 10%. So I'm buying my produce there. I might probably use the service. So
exactly. Yeah. Speaking of ShipBob, a company I like, I've worked with the team in the past. I think there are a couple of things happening here. Number one is that they're rumored, or like very publicly, have already hired a banker, JP Morgan. They're going to IPO later this year.
Rumored?
Yeah, rumored / publicly announced that they're going to IPO later this year. The valuation being discussed in the news reports right now is about $4 billion. The question is, what is the valuation based on? Is it a multiple of revenue, which seems likely? It's certainly not a multiple of EBITDA, because you're talking about a low margin transportation and logistics business, part 3PL, part 4PL, part software, seems to be. And I think this is one of the first tech-enabled logistics types firms that's going to be hitting the public markets. And so I think the market broadly is going to get a view into what percentage of revenue and profitability is each of these components. And I think that will greatly help the investor community as well decide what to invest in next.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in some of those early roadshow conversations to understand kind of like what are they selling. And I think it's going to be really interesting to get a kind of, if it goes, right? Because I think what people need to understand is, just because it's an intention, there's a lot that changes in market sentiment. There's a lot that changes on the investor side, and sort of what this ultimately is the valuation is not based on anything other than some mathematical equation that gets you to what will the market support. And so it'll be interesting to see how they position this. And it will be equally, if not more interesting, to understand how the public markets react to it. But I think it's exciting. I think it goes to sort of like taking a staid business model and reinventing it and finding a position and exploiting it. I think that's really something that not a lot of people are able to successfully do, which is, we talk about this and a lot on the show, and I talked with Jess when I hosted a lot, which is like, raise money when you don't need to, come up with ideas when you have a foundation you can involve. Don't sit on your laurels. So
definitely good for ShipBob. They're going to IPO later this year, and we will certainly tear down the S1 when it comes out. And so I look forward to doing that. Kind of moving on, some stories that came out this week we are not going to cover because they're not so interesting, and or it's unclear what's there. One is Foot Locker Store of the Future.
You're a retailer.
Second
Stop.
is Express declared bankruptcy in a hurry.
I mean, we were waiting for that. It was like, yeah, wait, it was today? Wasn't it like 90 days ago or before? So all it took was one look at that balance sheet to be like, wait. So very tried and true old school retail company. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but we're not talking about it. But
we are not going to talk about it.
What we are going to talk about, going back to your ShipBob comment, and for those that don't, I can't believe there's anybody in the world that doesn't follow Mr. Rick Watson on LinkedIn at this point. He is a everyday writer, something I'm always very jealous of. Working with him, he is like dialed in and gets it done, and it's always terrifically done and insightful. And this week, there was a very well responded to post made about PayPal and some of its news. And I'm going to turn it over to him in a moment to talk about it. But the intention here is to sort of take a little bit of a different spin. You know, not only am I not wearing a blazer today, I'm channeling my anti-finance bro and doing my best to fill incredibly big shoes of Jess, who is just the best. We're going to leverage my being given a little bit of control, which is always so crazy, to take a little bit of a different spin. So we're almost going to make this like a live LinkedIn post. So when ShipBob comes out, there'll be a LinkedIn post. There was a phenomenal post about PayPal. So we're gonna talk about PayPal and the news it announced, and we want to talk about it. Actually, we're not gonna just be talking heads. I think it's gonna be fun to get your questions, your disagreements, and most importantly, just an engagement. So let's kick it to Rick. Let's talk about PayPal. Let's talk about payments, which are secretly a big part of this business and a big mover of the needle for companies. But with that, I will start talking and you will start talking.
Yeah, look, PayPal has had a troubled history. To quote Elon Musk, PayPal had a better roadmap in the year 2000 than it did in the year 2020. And so it's been through a lot of owners, and it's been through a lot of, including eBay, and then it was spun out on its own. And so that's sort of one thread being pulled through this narrative. The second thread is sort of the rise of Shopify. And one of the origins of the post is that 150 million Shop Pay users later, PayPal has woken up to the threat that is in front of them. And so we'll talk about some of that today. And why is this important? And so if you look at e-commerce, the platform market, it seems to be obviously the biggest, most expensive piece of software that any like retailer will buy. Well, in the Shopify universe, it's actually kind of not true. If you look at the application stack of the average brand, Shopify is almost like the smallest component compared to some of the other applications you'll have to buy. And why is that true? It's true because something that the Shopify management team is keen to talk about is their attach rate. It's like for every dollar of GMV that Shopify makes, they make what, now in their Plus business 0.25, they raised that like a third, above that, but 2/3 and growing percentage of their revenue is what they call merchant services. What's merchant services? Financial services. It's payments, it's capital, it's loans. It's all those things. And some small percentage of that is App Store too. So the fact is Shopify is a SaaS business. True. But if Shopify were only a SaaS business, it would be a completely uninteresting business to talk about, in a similar vein to some other SaaS platforms in the market, like BigCommerce, who are, I would say, envious and not envious of Shopify's position. Envious that obviously it's great to grow faster, but not envious because Shopify's dependence on Shop Pay means that in some semblance of the world, if you adopt Shopify, you're locked into Shop Pay. And so I'd say for the most part, that's good news for merchants. I think for some merchants, that's potentially bad news if they want flexibility on that front. So that's sort of like one question. Yeah.
Yeah, just give like a quick synopsis on like Shop Pay.
Yeah, look, Shop Pay is Shopify's accelerated checkout process. And so they incorporate Pay Later, they incorporate MasterCard Visa, they incorporate a number of different options on a one-page checkout that is enabled by SMS. Shopify, in addition to like make sure that its checkout was not diluted as part of its platform, famously 4 years ago shut off high-flying tech startups like Bolt and Bold and Checkout.com and others from like hijacking Shopify's checkout process. And then immediately in the next couple of years proceeded to like take over that business themselves. Like, sorry guys, good news, bad news. You're still a partner as long as you do anything else but do your own checkout.
And I think then to like really illustrate the point for the audience, you made it before, but I think it's really worth making again, which is like, what does that mean to Shopify's business model? Because I think people think about it as a commerce platform, which it does do easily for people, but what else? Because that's a big part of it, right?
Yeah. So essentially, look, if Shopify makes $4, three of those dollars come from financial services related dollars. And that's the difference between what the subscription service business, which is like a traditional SaaS business, versus a merchant services business, which is we make a percentage of sales and some money on the back of Stripe, which is our preferred payment provider, and any capital we outlay to merchants on our platform and things like that. So we're happy to get your questions as you talk about this. We want to make this interactive too, but it seems like, again, kind of on the top, we talked about this. 3 or 4 years later, PayPal has a new CEO. Starting in the last year, taken over from Dan Schulman, the new CEO has woken up to the fact that Shop Pay has gone off platform. And so the next thread of the conversation that I want to weave in is that Shopify has become to look more and more like PayPal, particularly. Go ahead.
That's a really important point. Explain that to the audience. ShopPay has gone off platform, like what they're doing, because I think it's really, really interesting.
Yeah. So look, even three years ago, ShopPay was announced to be a payment for like Google and Facebook on their marketplace. But really what Shopify started to do in the beginning of last year, Shopify announced like, look, we're going to be an enterprise platform. They brought in CRO Bobby Morrison. They hired an entire new sales team. And so they're like trying to sell Shopify up market. The reality is what they're selling is two products on market, and one much more than the other. And the product that they're selling much more than the other is Shop Pay. And the reason is, why are they doing that? It's a heck of a lot easier to sell an accelerated payment platform like Shop Pay than it is to ask someone to spend 3 months, 6 months, a year. It doesn't matter what you think the number is. It takes a couple of weeks to adopt a new payment method. And to hear Harley talk about it, Shop Pay is the new onboarding ramp to Shopify from an enterprise point of view. And in the kind of like the NASCAR checkout world where you see like Google Pay, Apple Pay, etc., all these things in the same time, Shop Pay is sort of the new black in this world. And they've quickly acquired over 100 million buyers. And Shop Pay is starting to become a recognizable brand, not necessarily on the same level as PayPal yet, particularly not internationally, but that's kind of what I mean is like Shop Pay is being sold as an independent component by Shopify itself.
Right. They're monetizing it, which is super important to this dialogue, because I think like if you look at what Marty Armstrong, what he asked, right, which is, I think that's really funny, Marty, that the Benjamin Buttons of payments, but like, I think it is interesting because Shopify is Shopify. It's a vertical stack, right? PayPal, what people don't know, it's like there's Venmo, there's PayPal Pay Later, there's Braintree. There's a lot there. So like talk about, to answer Marty's question, like what's your opinion on what does PayPal want to be when it grows up, and how does this sort of start to tell that narrative?
Yeah, look, PayPal, what it wants to be when it grows up, it's really anyone's guess, because I'm not sure that PayPal has articulated a clear vision for what it wants to be in its growth, other than there's sort of amalgamation of payments companies. Clearly, it wants to be a buyer-facing brand, that's recognized by PayPal. It has Venmo, which I don't know if you use Venmo. I use Venmo a lot, but that interface hasn't changed. Venmo hasn't changed in 10 years, like since it was a private company. And so now part of PayPal, like I'm not saying Venmo is not important, but like, is that key to PayPal's future? Is that going to merge into PayPal?
I think one thing to note of interest in Venmo is, and Cash App has sort of has risen. And I think it's an either or. I don't think it's a both, to be honest. And I think that falls along a lot of different lines. I was always kind of curious, and I think it speaks to this narrative too, which is an amazing brand, Venmo, not exactly sure how it is you monetize it, in the sense that if I send you money because we went out to dinner together and you paid, which is a very common practice, like there's no fee. And I don't see a lot of business transactions.
Are you saying it's very common that I pay when we go out together? Is that what you're saying?
You pay, yeah. I mean, we know that. And I always am like, wait, I forgot your Venmo. Sorry, I'll get you next time. Right. But I do think that oftentimes too in PayPal, they're like, are you sending to a friend? Are you sending to a business? The business gets fit. Oh no, of course I'm sending to a friend. But I think that these are things that, to your point, right? It's like, how are you making money? Right? Like Amazon, you said before about an e-commerce business. I cried foul on that. Amazon is not an e-commerce business. It may be a marketplace, but underneath it all, it is a provider of
web services.
Correct. And when you have that making cash, which you can talk a bit now about what's Braintree, because Braintree is the unspoken cornerstone of this business. And any deal that I've ever tried to do with PayPal on large scale, so I was like, and if you add in Braintree, so what is Braintree and why does it matter? And how does it talk about this? And again, I want to say, audience, like, this is you challenging, talking, sharing. We want to hear from you. Please keep them coming. Braintree, my friend.
Yeah, look, Braintree is, if you talk to a lot of enterprises, it is the multi-channel, omni-channel payment solution that they have. You lock in contracts as low as rate as you can because you promise to push as much volume their way as possible. Sort of like PayPal, Braintree is to PayPal what Stripe is to Shopify. And so when you think about the payment engine that powers Shopify, the question is, like, PayPal has all these relationships through, where are these from? They have them through Venmo. By the way, who's a Venmo customer? Amazon. They have the PayPal app. They have Braintree relationships. Shopify has not as many enterprise relationships as Braintree, and they don't have as many enterprise relationships as PayPal. Meanwhile, Stripe has traditionally been known for startups. Like, very easy to get a new account. Any developer can spin up a Stripe account, but it hasn't been necessarily known as the worldwide enterprise payment solution. And so I would love to even hear your take, or your take in the audience, like, what Shopify do they have an answer from an enterprise payment processing point of view? I saw that Shopify did a partnership with Adyen. Is that just for their European arm, or do they intend to bring that to the US? And how prevalent is that?
Oh, I mean, so again, audience, we'd love to hear from you. But I think that vis-a-vis Shopify, and I think that the question is, like, sort of how does Shopify get beyond this, right? I mean, having worked with them quite a bit, this is a very difficult part for an enterprise client with the negotiation with Shopify, which is, well, we have a private label credit card, which is still a big part of everybody's business. It breeds tons of loyalty, and it was a very prominent piece of the New York and Company business. It was really hard to sort of go from, well, we get a fee, right, for every dollar that gets spent on your private label credit card, guys. Like, the provider, which often is formerly Alliance Data Systems or now Bread Financial or Synchrony, some bank is getting a percentage of that. And oh yeah, by the way, they're not getting a percentage of your paying your balance. They're getting a percentage of your big balance that, as we talked about in the show before, $6,000 per household in the United States. So Shopify takes you away from that and says, okay, but you know what, we're going to process for you and we're going to get a fee on top of that. And so it becomes quite costly. But because it is such a cornerstone of their business, it's really hard for them to kind of get beyond. And so they're moving up market, right? They want to be enterprise. I think it's a great move for them. I think it's a great product. But, I was fortunate enough to be invited, thank you, Commerce Tools, and be part of a panel at Elevate. And this is where it was announced, these two are on a collision course. And so strange that Commerce Tools would align itself with a far broader.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about this, just to remind the audience. Last week, so like in the last few months, BigCommerce announced that they were a beta partner for what's called PayPal Fastlane and PayPal's new innovations. In the last week, Commerce Tools has announced that they're going to be a PayPal Fastlane partner, which is accelerated checkout on the Commerce Tools platform.
Right. So again, I think that Shopify with Shop Pay set a really high bar. It's really easy. And I think that people, similar to Amazon's next day delivery, people are now expecting a very seamless, frictionless checkout. And I think that it means you go, you submit, you're done. And so PayPal has kind of come in and said, okay, we're going to work with these companies to be able to execute that. And Commerce Tools, as a growing proprietor, I guess, or developer of the headless or the composable environment, and it's a fantastic product. We've often talked about, like, there's Commerce Tools and there's Shopify, what exactly that means, and there's everybody else. I think that we're sort of needing to keep up. It's not a keeping up with the Joneses or keeping up with the Kardashians at this point. It's a truly a feature that's expected. And I think that, like Marty Armstrong is writing in the comments, right? Accelerated checkout's not innovation, right? It's keeping up with the expectations.
Yeah.
That's really well said.
And this is a good time. We have a couple of slides. Like, PayPal has woken up to the fact that Shopify is, I won't say it's like obviously taking over the market, but I would say like if you kind of go back to the if there will be blood, Shopify is trying to drink PayPal's milkshake. And so if we're going there, let's just look at what is PayPal Fastlane and how bloody similar is it to Shop Pay. And so on the left, look, with apologies to companies like Bolt and Bold and checkout.com and like whatever, that's great. You guys are in this market now. Going forward, it's between these two players. That's it. And so from a PayPal point of view on the left, what do you have? Pay in full, pay later. Click on it. Shop Pay, what do you have on the right? Pay in full, pay later. Click on it. Looks the same. How about the next slide? PayPal has a let's confirm it's you. Get in your SMS. Does this sound familiar to anyone else? Like, I don't know if there's copyright infringement or just like no trade secrets or whatever the heck we're talking about here, but how could they be any more similar, Nick?
I mean, they can. And I think what's interesting, and I love to go back to, for those that haven't read Built to Last, it's a great book. And I think the whole like VHS beta conversation there is really important, which is the best technology doesn't always win. And this is a case in point where think about Pay Later, right? Pay Later was, a firm which we were at Fashion to Figure. We think had a firm in 2015. It's a credit vehicle, not a Pay Later, but it was sort of the beginning of this whole, kind of evolution. I mean, PayPal offered Pay Later, like Pay in Full, pretty early. No one uses it.
No, zero.
Why? They were just terrible at marketing it. So, I think that Nick Molnar was amazing at marketing Afterpay, and Klarna won. But I guess my point is that here it is. PayPal had so many opportunities and so much in terms of resources, and was such an early mover. And I think your point about their roadmap in 2012 and outlook versus 2020 earlier in the conversation is so true. And I think it's so important for the audience to understand a couple things. One, it's not what you're bringing to market. A lot of times it's how you're bringing to market, and thinking that through and being invested in not just the technology or the product resources, but the distribution and the sales or marketing resources. Two, I think that never stop innovating, and never stop innovating, whether you're a commerce consumer facing business or a product. I mean, the market always catches up to you. And when it does, what happens, Rick? and the market catches you, what does it become?
You are totally, it's a commodity and you become totally dead. Look, for the merchants in the audience, and Nick, you like to joke that everything for me goes back to eBay, but the reality is like they were the first commerce platform of any consequence. And who was the payment engine for eBay?
Look,
PayPal. And
did you see
so
the comment from Adam Reesberg early in the conversation, right? He put it up there. I mean, he said like, it was eBay's game to lose. And guess what? What did they do?
They lost it. They fumbled the ball.
Okay.
So from a Fumble Rooski point of view.
Yeah, by the way, how is that our first football reference on the day after the draft?
Hey, by the way, I think you missed my Mr. Irrelevant here. I mean,
I know.
That's a reference.
I actually didn't miss it, but I was so engaged in our conversation. But
yeah. Look, if you're a merchant, I don't care if you're an eBay seller or if you're a brand, if you have to log into the PayPal UI, like you're already like slitting your wrists immediately as you're doing so. It's such a maze of BS rules and hoops you have to jump through just to get access to your own freaking money and account. And the fact that we're sitting here in 2024, I even have to talk about this. It's kind of ridiculous. Look, Shopify is going to have to get there. They don't really have this sort of experience yet. Like they're going to need to have like PayPal does.
We released a white paper this week, right? And I think in it, we talked a lot about, and if you haven't downloaded our white paper, you should download our white paper.
WTF.
Exactly. I'm a little bit more the polished one in the group. I'm not going to use that. But in all seriousness, I think, what we really focused on was putting yourself in a position to win. And winning in how you deliver what we're terming a modern brand promise is seamless. Being in a lot of places at once. Like the way the consumers are behaving is they want you to be, whether it's like in the grocery store or whether it's in a convenience store, whether it's at home. And I think that the need to make checkout, which is where, I don't think anyone realizes, I don't have a stat to pull other than it's like 80, it's like some crazy number of a client I've been working with recently has this abandonment in checkout. Like you before, when I was about to stop you, I tried, you didn't stop. When you were like log in, as soon as you say log in checkout, it's like stop.
Right.
Stop.
Yeah. And look, that's the goal of these accelerated checkouts. And so again, kind of going back to the commerce war is a proxy for the payment wars. And so what you have on one side is that you have Shopify and kind of like the headless view of the world in the platform wars. But then from a monetization point of view, you have Shopify, ShopPay, Stripe versus PayPal. And by the way, PayPal has invested in Shopware, which is like one of the biggest German e-commerce platform providers. Why do you think PayPal invested in Shopware? It's not a mystery. They want to make sure that they're at the table, and that like we're going to have some control here. And so on the other side, they need to partner with commerce tools. They need to partner with big commerce. They need to like, I'm surprised I haven't seen like a huge press release from Salesforce. If maybe Salesforce is like still asleep after PayPal, like, yeah, they're still around.
They are still around. And I think it sort of, look, Salesforce was also great. They accumulated a lot of assets. They built a terrific platform, and then they were disrupted. And I think that
then they fell asleep and haven't talked about Demandware or Salesforce Commerce Cloud in a few years now.
Right. We were talking to someone earlier this week who was talking about when's the last time Demandware changed. So, but I do think that there are a lot of call options for these companies. Some work out well, some not so much. And I think it does also, kind of get to like, what do you have? What do you do with it?
Right.
So, I think, look, in light of the passing of O.J. Simpson, I'll tell you a really quick story, which is in the early 70s, my dad, who was
seriously O.J.
Seriously,
Let's
my
keep
dad,
going.
who was an idea guy, like great idea guy, but just couldn't execute. And I think that was a great lesson to me in hindsight. But he signed a contract with O.J. Simpson, True story. My brother has the OJ Simpson sneaker, like the prototype in the shoe. And this is OJ like right before Hertz. Like this is OJ in the good days, not OJ.
Peak OJ.
But like the bottom line is like he never got it done. So like you could have these great ideas, you can have these visions, and a lot of these companies do, but it's really about their ability to execute and get it across. Shopify needs to figure out life beyond payments. And PayPal needs to figure out a better narrative, not just being part of like a commerce tools suite or a big commerce suite, and they think that they need to sort of continue to think about all that through the lens of the consumer, which to me, and I'll get off my soapbox for a minute before I get back on my soapbox.
Definitely.
But I think that so few people think about the end at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like it's about the consumer and how they're going to behave.
Yeah, and look, the consumer has to be at the center. And I'm glad that your family didn't take the glove license from OJ. That's probably something we don't want to get into on the show.
No.
But look, on both sides, we need to figure out what the future is. And the future from Shopify seems to involve something like we're going to use Shop Pay to penetrate the enterprise market, and we're going to use Shop Pay to bootstrap the Shop app marketplace. And so how can we turn from a platform to a payments business to a marketplace business? I think those are the chess moves that are playing out in the Shopify universe. If Toby has anything to say about it. On the other side is like PayPal, what's the play here? The question in my mind is, does PayPal feel like they need to acquire an e-commerce platform to make sure they're not bumped out of the equation? Are investments enough? That's why it's fun to be here. Look, we can see the future play out, but I think PayPal needs its own vision that's not copying Shopify.
100%. And Shopify is Shopify, right? The same way Commerce Tools is Commerce Tools. And I think it'll be interesting to see kind of innovatively what happens. But I agree with you, right? That they need to sort of declare something and be willing to die on some hill versus dipping.
Yeah, exactly. So that's going to wrap up this segment. Hopefully you enjoy the payments platform conversation. Look, the reality is, folks, we don't know what the heck we're talking about. We're all just speculating like you guys are. And it's a lot of fun for us. So hopefully it's fun for you listening. This will roll us right into our premiere segment of the program.
No pressure.
We have a special guest here. Welcome, Nick Kaplan with the Kaplan's Corner.
So let me just take out. So we don't really know what we're talking about, but in this case, we do. And what we know is this. So as I mentioned before, I was down at the Elevate Summit in Miami. Commerce Tools put together its initial sort of inaugural summit. And I was on a panel and we were sort of wrapping things up and people were talking about their takeaways. And someone said we can't predict the future. So here's what I'll say to you today. We can predict the future. We can predict the future. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be right, but I think we can do a pretty darn good job. In our organizations, we have a tendency to sort of overthink it. And maybe in some cases it's job justification or your existence or the inability to communicate well. But there is data, a lot of data, but you only need a little bit of data to understand kind of what's happening in your business. And in looking at some data, looking at some recent trends, and most importantly, in talking to your consumer, and even more importantly, listening to your consumer, you can communicate with your team, which isn't your group, it's the group, the family, the business, and take a data-driven approach to the future and predict it. And I think that there's a lot of conversations around, the incrementality and predictive analytics and AI, and these are all really good aids. But ultimately, it's you who have to be willing to sort of take a stand, look ahead, and do what you don't think you can do, which is predict the future, because you can do it. And that, audience, is today's Kaplan's Corner.
All right. Cue cheering or something, man. I'm excited. I like the idea that I can predict the future. I think this goes well with like what Jeff Bezos used to talk about a lot, where he would generally say that I know what customers are going to want in 20 years. Cheap
He
prices
also,
and faster shipping.
of course, and he also helped them figure out what they wanted. And so I think the symbiosis of brands, products, providers, customers is often overlooked. So totally agree.
Awesome.
Bezos, good man.
Yeah, he did a few things in e-commerce. So that's going to be a wrap today for the Watson Weekend. We're excited to be here.
Do we have to dance? Do a dance party without Jess?
Do a dance party. Come on. I'm going to do the sprinkler. I don't know what you're going to do.
I mean, I'm going to do my raise the roof. I always raise the roof.